Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2023. And that brings us to a title which has been designated by the Criterion Collection at spy number 1185. And it's being released by Criterion, among others, in a 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition. This is, again, a work from 1985. The name of the filmmaker is Martin Scorsese. And the name of the picture is After Hours. This is the work, the electrifying work from the year 1985, and it is from the screenplay written by Joseph Minion, and it is from the producers Amy Robinson and Griffin Dunn and Robert F. Colesbury, and director of photography Michael Ballhaus, and directed by Martin Scorsese. And with this electrifying cast included, in which are, for example, Rosanna Arquette and Catherine O'Hara and Linda Fiorentino and John Hurd and Dick Miller and Terry Garr, and starring Griffin Dunn as Paul Hackett, one of the great characters in this, one of the great films from this one-of-a-kind artist extraordinaire, Martin Scorsese. And it's this film, which is After Hours. After Hours is in the Criterion Collection 4K UHD and Blu-ray physical media catalog, and this wonderful new release in 2023. After Hours is in the Criterion Collection. Let me say that again. After Hours is in the Criterion Collection. And my goodness, what a film this is. If we were to try to focus in on the plot or story structure of the work After Hours, or the picture After Hours, I think we could focus in, of course, on the main character, which is Paul, the Griffin Dunn character. And we meet him immediately in this New York work setting, and it's described in the environment of computers and word processing in the 1980s. And then immediately we see him maybe thrust into, say, the tropes and the norms, almost the isolationist norms of sort of city life that he himself occupies, living seemingly on his own, watching TV in a type of almost meaningless state. And then that brings us to him going out on his own with his text of Henry Miller, and then making a chance encounter with one of the many characters that we will meet along the way in this tapestry, and that's the character portrayed by Rosanna Arquette. This is the Marcy character, and almost immediately there is a kind of attraction, or perhaps the semblance of an attraction, and our main character of Paul, or one of our main characters, I should say, Paul, begins a type of journey which is perhaps suggested by, or otherwise inspired by, his desire to want to maybe meet Marcy, and maybe have some kind of encounter with Marcy, maybe on an intimate or sexual or physical level. But that is only the beginning of the tale, because we have that part of the story leading to another part of the story, leading to Paul meeting other characters, and from that point we go to other parts of the story, other areas that lead into other things, chain reaction. A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, all the way down to X, Y, and Z. And it's zany, it's a wild ride, it's a real thoroughly intense, electrifying, zany ride through the underbelly of New York City at night, circa 1985, so 1980s New York. And we get all those little details of of the sort of downtown New York bohemian lifestyle, the art scene, artists, and artists' lofts, and sculptures of bagels and other paper mache, and studios and unknown rooms, and crazy super speedy taxi rides, and $20 bills that fly out in this breathtaking speed, and the lack of money, lack of funds, leading to a chain reaction that leads our character Paul to another state of crisis, because that in turn leads him to yet another state of crisis, and meeting other characters and having to go to a different spot in order to achieve this thing. But in order to achieve this thing, he has to go here. In order to do this, he has to do this, but he has lost the ability to do this. So in order to be able to gain the ability, he needs to go here, here, here. This is a through ride. This is an utter journey through hell. That is the New York City night scene of the 1980s in the hands of Martin Scorsese and company. And what a joyous hell ride this is. In many aspects, this is kind of like a Dante's Inferno circa 1985, with Paul Hackett at the front and center of this. And we see his viewpoint and the absurdist nature of all the situations he finds himself in, and also the almost outlandish, out of context, out of whack characters that he meets. Because when we get a semblance, or when we think we know who these characters are, there's a sudden turn or switch, or an undercurrent or surprise that totally shifts us off balance, or pushes us off balance, so that we as audience members, and indeed Paul, the Griffin Dunn character, we have no idea what's going on. And that leads to moments of absurdity, of sort of surreal comedy, of this type of a comedy that can turn almost violent and threatening on a dime. And this type of energy that maybe has its links in terms of a sexual pent-up energy, maybe sexual frustration, images and depictions of sex, whether it be graffiti on a wall, or a look, or a feeling, or maybe an understanding or misunderstanding or misconception about who the other is, based on, say, maybe a little thing found in a handbag, or a medication detail, or maybe a look across the street, seeing maybe a sexual encounter between two strangers across the street, or maybe a feeling of attraction that turns nightmarish and then turns ugly, only to then turn back to a series of attractiveness, but then turns into a completely extreme situation of life and death that leads our main character to another part of the city, or another set of characters that in turn bring with it a sense of sexual adventurousness and danger and threat, as well as the potential for the explosion of violence, as well as the possibility for connection and romance, and maybe a type of intimacy that might be ultimately elusive to our main character. Thus, this idea of a journey which seems to start but maybe has a kind of endless streak to it. This journey that has many permutations, because we're not quite sure where it will lead us. Maybe there's a sense of danger even in the littlest thing, or seemingly minute thing, like, say, someone throwing a set of keys down from a loft on a flight above, and the keys suddenly turn fast, and sharp edges almost can kill someone. And that can be at times horrific and funny all at once. And you add to that the sort of frenzied style, the kinetic style of the Bauhaus camera work, the Thelma Schoonmaker editing under the direction of Martin Scorsese, with the performances to boot, included, of course, the sort of the center stage performance by Griffin Dunn. And what you have is this very volatile, volcanically explosive work that is equal servings funny and hilarious, and also equal servings Hitchcockian, suspenseful, and equal servings like a horror show. And you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea what the agendas are of all the people that we meet. And that's part of the fun. That's also part of the dread. And that's also part of the sort of frenzied energy of this film. And we're getting... I mean, I don't want to call it like a quasi-documentary per se, but it is this idea of New York. It's a stylized view of New York That also has borrowings or heapings of type of 1980s aesthetic and viewpoint and feel, all the way down to the look and decor and the clothes, and even the speeding of a taxi ride at night, and also the sort of the look at the sort of bohemian art world, and how things can turn pleasant on the one hand and suddenly very vicious and nasty on the other, and then maybe back to normal. Or is the feeling of going back to normal really a sense of normalcy, or is it just this oddness that is pervasive and ongoing? Whatever it is hilarious, it's funny, it is high octane, it is a supercharged thriller, it is a sort of brilliant set of beats and emotions and camera flourishes. It's at times a type of gritty New York film. It's also at times a borrowing very lovingly from, say, Nouvelle Vague, French New Wave techniques and traditions, all the way down to blends and edits in and out of the same shot, maybe sudden bursts of high cranked camera to suggest the hyper volatile speed of things flying through the air, whether it be a taxi ride at night, whether it be keys flying through the nighttime sky. Or it could be something like a slow camera movement that can suggest maybe the blossoming intimacy between two characters potentially, whether they're maybe talking about hairstyles, or whether they're talking about dancing, or whether they're talking about some bagel sculpture, or whether they're talking about a work of literature, or whether they're talking about something over coffee, or whether they're talking about some kind of role of intimacy. But then it can suddenly turn nasty and very vicious when you think about the crime rate in the area. Things are getting stolen, and mistaken identities, and who's committing these crimes, and what happens to our main character within all this mess, within all this chaos, and his life becomes even threatened, and he doesn't even know why. And so that type of absurdist comedy, hellish journey, is at once hilarious and chaotic and truly frightening all at once. And it's given this high octane energy that is oh so Martin Scorsese and company, and it's given even more prominence and more sort of beauty by when we are reminded of the circumstances surrounding Martin Scorsese in his career at the time, which we will get into a little bit when you talk about the supplements that are part of this great release, After Hours. And we have two great flourishes that have been a hallmark of Scorsese's style and will continue to be a hallmark of his style. And we have, again, performances that are across the board so brilliant in terms of their idiosyncratic, quirky traits. Catherine O'Hara comes to mind, John Hurt comes to mind, Rosanna Arquette, Linda Fiorentino, etc. I mean, the list is endless, because you have these scenes, and Paul Hackett, Griffin Dunn's character, is almost on the one hand playing off these scenes because of the almost the absurdist, uh, over the top, quirky nature of all the characters that he meets. And it's very possible, it's of course very tempting to lose oneself in the sort of over the top nature of the characters that he's playing off of. But that's one of the great things about it, because the balance is always there, struck between Paul Hackett's character, Griffin Dunn's character on the one hand, and each character that he meets along the way. We never lose sight of Paul's story. He never gets lost in the shuffle. I mean, he may get swept up in all the waves of chaos, that's for sure, but we never lose sight of his story. We never lose sight of his presence. He is always there in the moment, and that is, I think, a credit to how this performance is captured by Scorsese and company. And it's also, of course, in the hands of Griffin Dunn, the great Griffin Dunn, and the great Griffin Dunn performance. Again, it could have been a very passive character, but no, this is a very active, aggressive, frustrated protagonist slash antagonist, I suppose, in the form of Griffin Dunn's great performance. This is one of the great performances in a Scorsese film. It's one of the great performances of 1980s this New York style film. And Paul Hackett, again, in the Scorsese film, is one of the great characters in the Scorsese filmography, that is, again, trying to hold on to a sense of quote-unquote normalcy, but also just losing his grip every step of the way. And every time he tries to regain that grip, he just loses it even more. It just becomes this cycle of destruction and doom and disintegration. And what is he going to do but just follow the course of things, trying to resist along the way, trying to save his own life along the way, trying to figure out what the heck is going on, trying to get his keys, trying to go home, trying to just go back home and end this night. But it seems like this night of endless aspects of repetition that is almost like a nightmare dream. It's almost like this sweeping novel of change and absurdities and surreal qualities that is also very much part of the underbelly of New York at Night in the hands of Martin Scorsese. This is a dynamite film. This is an absolute dynamite film. And the output of Scorsese's filmography in the 1980s. I mean, it's that output. I mean, his whole filmography is fascinating. But if you take the 1980s output as an example, he is all over the place in a great way. I mean, he's going from extreme to extreme to extreme, again, due to certain details surrounding what he, how he was trying to maneuver, say, making films in sort of the studio system age at the time in the 1980s, how projects that he was planning kind of fell through at the last minute, most notably the project The Last Temptation of Christ, which has led to a type of professional crisis of Martin Scorsese's, which led to the possibility of After Hours. So in many ways, this film After Hours is almost like a quote-unquote return to form, end quote, as he himself acknowledges, trying to go under budget, trying to shoot within a restricted time schedule, which is almost like the way he was shooting films as he describes it back in the early days of his career. Also, it's a type of film of therapy for Martin Scorsese. And if we look at it in those terms, my goodness, what a catharsis, what a cinematic exorcism this is, what a brilliant feat of cinematic exorcism. What a film this is. What a film this is. And it is in the Criterion Collection. After Hours is in the Criterion Collection, this wonderful release. We'll talk a little bit about the 4K Blu-ray offerings of this, but yes, After Hours is in the Criterion Collection. So it seems like we have a number of Scorsese films that are, I think, very wonderfully and represented in a very healthy and wonderful way by Criterion in its physical media catalog. And this is yet the latest addition to that, or latest addition to that. And what an addition this is. This is so deserving of as much attention as it can get. It needs and it thrives on this type of attention because it is so worth it. This is one of the great times out of in terms of movie going, and it is kind of harkening back to a cinematic past of Scorsese, also homage to cinema past that Scorsese obviously loves and admires deep down in his very fiber, in his very soul, as well as being this rip-roaring, zany ride through hell that is New York nightlife circa 1980s in the hands of Scorsese and company. What a film this is. It is After Hours. After Hours is being released by Criterion, and what I have here is the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition, and it's here in this sort of plastic case, and we have two discs, one disc being the Blu-ray, the other disc being the 4K UHD disc, and it's housed in this system. Please pardon the appearance here. On this side would go the booklet or the leaflet or the foldout. I've just removed it for the sake of this video presentation, but it would go on this side. On this side of the interior of the plastic casing, you'd have the two-disc compartment in this stacked fashion, one disc being the Blu-ray and the other disc being the 4K. Now I have the 4K disc already in the machine just for purposes of showing what the menu looks like here. So we have the movie, and we have the chapters, and then the commentary, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and then the subtitle option. So the supplements beyond the commentary track will be found on the Blu-ray. But we will again talk about what those are a little bit later. But first, let's speak about the presentation. And according to the leaflet here, right here, the presentation, it says uh, about the master, and I quote, "After Hours is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. Approved by editor Thelma Schoonmaker, this new digital master was created from the 35mm original camera negative, which was scanned in 4K resolution on a laser graphics director film scanner. Director Martin Scorsese's personal 35mm print was used for color reference. The original monaural soundtrack was remastered from the magnetic track. On the 4K Ultra Disc HD on the 4K Ultra HD disc, the feature is presented in Dolby Vision HDR, high dynamic range. On the Blu-ray, it is presented in high definition SDR, standard dynamic range." So we have here, I think, a very I mean, I'll say it right now. I've seen this on DVD. I've seen it projected from a VHS tape back in the day when I was a student. I've never seen this in the theater. But up to then, I had always been relying on my DVD release, which I thought was really good. And so I don't claim to, again, like all the films I watch, I wish I had more expertise in them than I do, because I'm very, very limited in terms of my exposure and expertise when it comes to any given film, and that's definitely the case for After Hours for me. I don't have all the details under my belt or in my acumen to be able to discern what details have been changed from, say, the DV presentation to this Blu-ray or 4K presentation. But what I can say is, it was a 100% across the board, thoroughly wonderful experience. I thought it felt colorful and fresh and alive on the one hand, but it also had that Michael Ballhaus, Scorsese 80s look to it. I mean, there's a way in which the colors are flashy but not overly flashy. There is a way in which things feel like there's a type of aesthetic that feels kind of washed down and saturated, but also smoky and neon at the same time. So it has a feeling of a type of neo-noir thriller, but also has a feeling of almost a black and white absurdist comedy. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but there's a sense of the blandness of the proceedings, while suddenly flashes of color almost threaten to usurp or even ruin the sort of normalcy of our character Paul and what it is he has to go through. So that's my way of saying that there is a sort of a fidelity to the purposefully applied quote-unquote blandness of the film, which I think is very purposeful and very effective. And then also the flashes of neon really give rise to this overall sort of look that is very flat but also very full. I don't know if I'm explaining that myself very well. I mean, there's ways in which you feel a type of depth, but I think the overall effect, I think, is very disorienting. But I think that's the point of this, and as a type of psychological effect on me, as I'm watching this, I feel like that is being preserved in the way that this film is presented. So, again, in my very subjective and very non-technical jargon sort of way, I'm trying to say that this is dynamite stuff. I love this. I love the way it looked and sounded like this, and I loved my older DVD. But this is it for me. This is this is where I'm going to be going to when I watch this film again and again and again. So I really love this release from Criterion. Okay, so now I have the Blu-ray disc in the machine, and the reason why I have that is because I just wanted to re-emphasize the fact that you can watch the film on the 4K UHD disc or on the Blu-ray disc, and you can get this from Criterion on either the 4K UHD Blu-ray combo edition or the Blu-ray only edition. So if you're going to opt for the Blu-ray, you're going to get a really great looking presentation with regard to this After Hours. So you're going to have it's great. It's absolutely great. Now, one of the things too that we should keep in mind is the commentary track is also available whether you watch this on the 4K disc or on the Blu-ray disc. So, and it's a great commentary track. It's described as being from 2004, or the most part anyways, from 2004, with some additions that are made, I think, around 2023. Yes, 2023. So this was, for the most part, the 2004 component is actually from from previous releases. So it features Martin Scorsese and Thelma Schoonmaker and Michael Ballhaus and Amy Robinson and Griffin Dunn. And so you get so many great comments. I think primarily it features Martin Scorsese's comments, and then Michael Ballhaus, the director of photography, Griffin Dunn, and Amy Robinson. Thelma Schoonmaker, the editor, I think is not so prominently featured in the commentary track so much, but it's still okay. I mean, she mentions comments about how the work ethic of Martin Scorsese and how this is very much like going back to quote unquote his roots from early cinema stylings of the 1970s in Scorsese's cinema. So and then Scorsese speaks to this as well about how this film came in a type of professional crisis point in his life, given the failure at the time anyway of getting The Last Temptation of Christ off the ground. That was a real setback for him. And so, in many ways, he needed this. He needed this not just as a type of film to rehabilitate his career and his reputation in the eyes of the powers that be in Hollywood and beyond, but also as a way to sort of serve as a kind of cinematic therapy to get back into things. Because otherwise, if this hadn't come along, I mean, he mentions here and also elsewhere that it could have possibly, his experience with Last Temptation of Christ really could have hindered his career almost permanently. But the fact that After Hours fell in his lap, the timing that it did, and what it could offer him in terms of being a director once again was really, really great. And so that also leads to comments from Griffin Dunn and Amy Robinson about their producing partnership. I mean, they were producing a lot of films during this time. Reference to a film called Chilly Scenes of Winter is made, and that film also has a great Criterion release, by the way. So if you're interested in watching that film, it's a great film. So please check that out if you can. But After Hours was also a project, and Griffin Dunn and Amy Robinson speak about how they first encountered this and how they're trying to get it off the ground, who they're considered making it. These details also emerge in another supplement for this that's included in this Criterion release. But these details are really important because a lot of it was kind of happenstance, a lot of it was chance that brought these artists together to form After. So it's almost like its own little story of After Hours and the making of After Hours, and an interesting way of looking at things. And then they speak too about casting choices, how Griffin Dunn was ultimately decided upon as the main character, the main lead, and also the other actors that appear here, Rosanna Arquette, Linda Fiorentino, John Hurd, Terry Garr, etc., Catherine O'Hara, etc., and many others. So so the casting choices are key here, and also the working with Michael Ballhaus and this working relationship, which is one of the key artistic relationship in Scorsese's professional career. I mean, there are many of these relationships. His relationship with the editor, Tom Schoonmaker, also with his director of photography that he's worked over the years. So Michael Ballhaus is one of the key figures in this. So, and to get Michael Ballhaus's comments here about his use of lighting in these very darkened rooms and area, trying to suggest things that are ultimately illusory, which I think is really great. And also the difficulty of certain scenes, the challenge of certain scenes. I go back to this very famous scene involving keys falling through the nighttime sky, and he describes it as one of the difficult scenes. Also working with Scorsese, how Scorsese makes references to, say, Hitchcock and like Marnie, or this shot where he's holding a piece of paper. Paul Hackett's holding a piece of paper. Scorsese described it to Michael Ballhaus as being like this shot in Marnie where such and such a thing happened. So if you know the film Marnie, when you hear this part in the commentary track, this will make you sit up. Oh, that's really cool. That's so Scorsese. So and this is a kind of expression of his love of cinema and his shorthand when he's working on set, the Hitchcock. But it's also a reminder too of how a lot of this film After Hours is very much like Hitchcock. So and it's so great. And I should point out too that there's a segment of this towards the end, I think around the end of this, where you get some comments from Griffin Dunn and Amy Robinson, and it's recorded in 2023. And so they talk about the legacy of this film and the sort of aftermath of this film and the like. So it's slightly extended beyond what we got in previous DVD releases, the commentary track. So it's it's a little bit longer, which is really great. So you're getting the commentary track plus some extra, which is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So um, if you've already heard the commentary track from, say, a previous DVD release, you're still going to get something new when you listen to this. That's the point, which is great. And also having a commentary track is really wonderful as well. So it would have been nice to have a new commentary track, certainly. But again, what's the phrase? I don't want to be too picky about this because the commentary track is fantastic. It's really fantastic. So and it's great to follow. It's easy to understand, and it's very accessible. It's what great commentary tracks should be. So please check this out if you can. It's a wonderful commentary track, plus some extra stuff recorded for this year. So please check it out if you can. It is wonderful. And so now when we turn to the supplements, or when you want to watch the supplements, this is where we're going to go to the Blu-ray disc. The supplements will be found on the Blu-ray disc, and that's what I have in the machine here. And we have this ever-moving background to form the Blu-ray, and indeed it is the same thing that we see in the 4K disc. But unlike the 4K disc, the Blu-ray disc will also have the supplements menu in the supplements section. So I've already gone to the supplements menu here, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 supplements here. So the first thing here is a discussion, a talk between Fran Lebowitz and Martin Scorsese. And Fran Lebowitz talks with Martin Scorsese about After Hours. This is approximately 20 minutes, and it's described as being from 2023. And this is really cool. They have this wonderful sort of mutual respect and friendship, which is evident from the get-go. You get this little wonderful speaking, sort of kind of hot mic moment, sort of so to speak, over the opening credits of the supplement, which is really lovely. It's very cute. I love it. It's Martin Scorsese has this wonderful affable charm, which shines through so wonderfully here in this discussion. He speaks about Michael Ballhaus's contribution, the performances. Also speaks to about his point in career, the king of comedy, the debacle that was his attempt to try to make his first attempt at trying to make The Last Temptation of Christ, and then how it led into this film, which is a quote unquote smaller film in terms of budget, in terms of schedule, and this was something that he needed as a type of cinema therapy. And also another exercise into the world of New York, the cinematic decor and the environment that is a New York film in the hands of Scorsese. Speaking of the performance of the film, Griffin Dunne, etc. And also an interesting part of the discussion comes up about how, in terms of contemporary criticisms of the film, and how those criticisms at the time included maybe some, maybe not accusations per se, but some suggestions that this film had a very poor treatment and depiction of its female characters. And I think Martin Scorsese addresses this or describes this criticism that he received at the time from some circles, and then addresses how he feels about this criticism. And I think it's a very robust and healthy discussion that's had here. So this discussion between Fran Lebowitz and Martin Scorsese is wonderful, absolutely wonderful, and it's just a fun time. It's and I remember, and Fran Lebowitz talks about watching the film for the first time, and I mentioned earlier in the earlier discussion about the taxi cab ride, but she was saying how she watched the taxi cab, and that's what it was like in New York at the time. In terms, suddenly there was a period where the taxis would suddenly be going at these dangerous speeds all of a sudden. It wasn't like that until a certain point in the mid-1980s, and she said when she saw this, they were laughing because they could totally relate to this. So in many ways, it's almost like a time capsule type of film. And so those are really lovely details. So please check out this conversation between the two of them here, approximately 20 minutes. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And then next up we have Filming for Your Life, Making After Hours. And this is a 2004 documentary carried over from a previous release. It's approximately 19 or 20 minutes, and it's edited in this type of making of, maybe DVD featurette type of making up. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's fantastic, and it's packed with information. Again, many of the points having been mentioned in the commentary track, but some of them are being maybe embellished or further embellished upon or complemented upon So we get a lot of comments once again from the great producer team of Amy Robinson and Griffin Dunn, and also talking about the Joe Minion script, talking also about a great anecdote involving Tim Burton. Which is wonderful. And also Amy Robinson and Griffin Dunn reminding us too about the relationship in terms of Amy Robinson and not only in terms of producing this film, but also her appearance, very memorable appearance in an earlier Scorsese film called Mean Streets. And so her working with Scorsese again in the context of After Hours is a type of wonderful bookmarking or coming full circle in an interesting way in terms of their professional relationship. So really fascinating stuff. And also she could feel and she could understand the crisis, the professional crisis that Scorsese himself was undergoing, which he himself describes in some of the interviews with Scorsese, which are also included with this documentary. And also Thomas Schoonmaker's interviews are also included here. Shooting at night is mentioned here, and so the schedule meant that say Griffin Dunn and others were shooting mostly at night, so they're sleeping during the day and shooting at night. So he describes it as living like a vampire. I just thought it was a really interesting detail. I mentioned, well, there are other filmmakers considered for this. And Tim Burton's name appeared, and so there's a really lovely anecdote involving Tim Burton and how he almost directed After Hours, but certain circumstances arose at the last minute. But watch the documentary and also listen to the commentary track for those details and others. Really lovely. So it's great that this is carried over. I mean, it was great in other releases, and it's great now, and it's so informative. So please check out the comment. I'm not the comment, but this documentary called "Filming for Your Life." The making of the film. So please check that out if you can. It's great. It's approximately 19 minutes. And then that's not all, because then we have this feature which is produced by the Criterion Collection in 2023, which is called The Look of After Hours. And it says, this program, produced by the Criterion Collection in 2023, features audio interviews with costume designer Rita Ryack and production designer Jeffrey Townsend, illustrated with film clips, production stills, and ephemera from After Hours. So this is wonderful. So it is like a kind of video essay of sorts, combining the two of them and their audio interview excerpts or voiceovers talking about various aspects of the production and costume. So, for example, Jeffrey Townsend talks about the details in the production design that were never explained in the film, but there was a kind of backstory to everything, but there was also mystery to everything. Like he describes how he's trying to figure out all these details in terms of what background details in the loft meant, or how Michael Bauhaus lighting would just shine a little light somewhere, and that would speak volumes as to the hidden meanings behind things, or the backstories behind things that were never overtly explained in the film, which made it even more kind of rich environment. And Rita Ryack speaks about, for instance, some costume aspects, for instance, the suit that Paul wears that becomes gradually dirty and sweaty as the film progresses. And so, which is a really great detail, and it's explained here or elsewhere about how you could tell the point in time of the character by all the suits that are worn, and they have this varying degrees of like sweat and dirt, which is, I think, an interesting detail. And there's also an interesting detail about a patch, the King Kong Company patch, which is also a kind of a sort of a reference to Taxi Driver, and also Martin Scorsese too, and the costume design in terms of a Martin Scorsese cameo, which is interesting, and the like. So this is a really great kind of supplement. I love supplements like this because, again, these details about the production design and costume design, blink and you miss it type of thing, which is part of the beauty of watching After Hours, because you can watch it and rewatch and catch these new details, all the way down to certain things like graffiti on the wall. I mean, there's a pretty provocative, funny, frightening piece of graffiti, which is also reproduced in the inner part of this of the After Hours Blu-ray, or the inner plastic here. But so you can open the plastic case to see what I'm talking about. But even details like that, who drew that, etc. That's really interesting. So I love supplements like this. So The Look of After Hours, approximately 18 minutes. And then we have a section which is called Deleted Scenes. And this is described as being presented here are 7 deleted scenes from After Hours. It's totaling approximately 8 minutes. So there are I mean, it does go into certain specifics. Oh, I should point out too that the filming for your life making after hours actually has also details about how the film could have ended, possibilities in terms of alternate endings as well. So you get a kind of sense of that in some of the deleted scenes, not quite, but you get a kind of sense of that. So, but you do get deleted scenes that are extensions of scenes that we already have in the film, or extensions of dialogue, or actual dialogue scenes that are just hinted at or maybe made reference to in the final film product, etc. Thelma Schoonmaker also makes reference to one of these deleted scenes in that 2004 documentary, which I mentioned. So that's interesting. I mean, it's a great set of deleted scenes, so please check that out if you can. Totaling 8 minutes for these 7 scenes. And then the film supplements are rounded out, or the picture supplements are rounded out by the trailer, the inclusion of the trailer. So this concludes the supplement that can be found on the Criterion release, the Blu-ray. We have some new supplements, and it would have been nice to have more supplements. That would have been great. Something like an academic visual video essay, or an interview with an academic scholar, an expert on Scorsese works, or after hours. That too would have been really cool. I mean, or a new commentary track, that would have been really cool as well. But what we do get here is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Some the commentary track and some of the special features from past releases are carried over, which is great. But then also we have some new supplements produced by Criterion, which are also fantastic, including some new comments from Scorsese in the Fran Lebowitz Scorsese discussion. So overall, wonderful, wonderful selection of supplements. And then let's turn to the cover art design and the fold out here. Let's first talk about the cover art design. Look at that cover art design and the motif and the use of the after hours. And I love how the script font almost bleeds off of the front here, overlapping into the border, which I think is so great. And the use of the green and the pink and the type of almost collage paper mache effect, perhaps. That's also like graffiti on a wall. It's also that rough look to this shot of Griffin Dunn's Paul, which I think is also taken from a photo or still or shot from Paul in one of the film's moments. So it has that sort of almost dirtied quality, which I think is very apropos, because that's the progression or the destruction of Paul's character as we go from point to point to point to point throughout the film. So that's great. And also there's this look which is like, some portions confusion, other points shock, and then just WTF. I mean, this film After Hours is a WTF type of film, and I think this cover art design really expresses that really well. And then you get the color motif overlapped into the back there. So I should point out here, the cover art design, or the arts, is credited to art direction Eric Skillman, Sarah Habibi, designer Drusilla Adeline Sister Hyde. Our dear friend Sister Hyde is responsible here for this wonderful cover art. So cheers to our dear friend Sister Hyde. What a wonderful cover art design. And so, I mean, we had a great conversation some time back on this YouTube channel. So please check out the interview that I had with Drusilla, aka Sister Hyde. So it was a great time. And here we have another wonderful artistic concept and design. Well done. I love this so much. And then we have the fold out here, which is, again, I'm not a fan of the fold out type, because I like the staple booklet type, so I would have preferred to have seen the staple booklet type, but this is cool for a number of reasons. So first of all, there are some little details you can see that are very much echoing the film through and through, and even down to the use of certain font. This font, which is very reminiscent of the font that's used in some of the opening credits here, which is very cool indeed. And I love this. And the feel of the paper too. It has a sort of thickness to it, which I really appreciate. There's a feeling of the quality of the paper, which I like, and I just love that. If you know the film, you know what this is. This is really cool. That's a cool detail. And then there is the essay, No Exit, by Sheila O'Malley. What a great essay this is. So please watch the film first. And then after you've seen the film, you can read this great essay, No Exit. It goes into details about how this figures into Scorsese's career, and then also some thematic cues in the development of the film After Hours, and then some character and plot and thematic points to be made as well. Specifics to the film. So again, watch the film first, and then you can read the great essay, No Exit. After Hours is in the Criterion Collection. You believe After Hours is in the Criterion Collection. So well done for this. This is a great release, and I'm overall very, very thrilled. Just very pleased with this. And it's a reminder too of just how kinetic and how over the top and how zany and what a wild ride this is. This is a great wild ride. That's just an adrenaline rush. That's a WTF horrific, frightening film that is so absurd and comic and funny. Absolutely scary, absolutely hilarious, and just over the top, utterly, utterly brilliant. This is the work which is After Hours. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies, including After Hours, including the works of Scorsese, including the works produced by Griffin Dunn and Amy Robinson and company, and beyond. So please, please, my dear, dear friends, please continue to watch a lot of great, great movies. Please continue to enjoy your cinema journeys, and stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.